to dance. Well, I danced a lot. At that age, you went to dance to meet girls, but it turned out I wasn't too good a dancer. And she was great. In fact, her older sister was a professional dancer, it turned out. And she had a partner, and they danced in various clubs in Minneapolis, and even danced in Las Vegas. And I danced with both her and her sister later on. And Joyce was really better than she was, because she could follow me all the time. But she danced with me and said, "Well, Jim, now you're a little bit out of sync here," and so on. Anyway, we started going together, and what happened, I started going steady with her. And one day I went out and bought a ring and proposed to her, and she accepted, and we got married. And we got married in the Wesley Methodist Church. On December 26th, the day after Christmas, the church was all decorated. And that was in 1941, and Joyce was 20, and I was 23. So we were married there. So getting back to me on what I was doing when I was with that company until I went into the service. And I took my basic training in an outfit that was an anti-aircraft unit. They shot 90mm guns for high-flying planes and a 40mm for low-flying planes, which are pretty primitive compared to what they can do in that aircraft now. They can shoot clean across the whole United States. And when I finished with my basic training, well, let's talk about me in basic training. First of all, the first thing you learn is what you do at that time in all Army units, is you learned about shooting the Army rifle, and you were shown how to take it apart and how to clean it and how to take care of it, and you practiced till you were a pretty good shot. I was a pretty good shot, but not like some of them who are really experts at it. Did that, and then the next thing they do is they taught you to use the 40mm, which you did, and then they learned you how to take it apart, and then put it all together again, and put it up in boxes, and take it apart and put it together. I thought, well, why were they doing that? Well, it turns out that whole bunch of the people in the military, the Marines were trying to take Iwo Jima, and that was an island that was owned by the Japanese, and they were hiding in caves and trying to get them out, and the Marines lost, some say 6,000 people on doing that, but thousands of people were married because they would get in caves and hide and then come out and do their thing. So this is what they were doing. This 40mm had a flat trajectory, and they were going to use it to go into caves. So that's what the reason for this thing was. So I took my basic training in that, and then I was transferred to serve at my regular post. And I suppose because of my background in accounting, I was put in an overseas replacement depot on the coast around San Diego. And when I got there, why I evidently made some impression on the officers that run it, because I was learning everything and doing it. And so all of a sudden I was promoted to a corporal. That's 2 stripes. And then later to a T4, and then later to a buck sergeant. That's 3 stripes in the thing. And because I was a sergeant now, I could live off post. So I sent for Joyce. I went back and got her and brought her to San Diego, and we found an apartment. And actually, it was a garage. To tell you the truth, a garage of some people that had a place, but they had set it up and made it a place to live. And when Joyce got there, she got a job with a JAG outfit. You know, JAG is Judge Advocate General, and this one was by a full bird colonel that run it, and covered the whole west coast and the 8th Service Command. And she got a job with them, and she was so good at what she did that she was at every trial they had. You've seen them in movies and so forth, where these women are practicing that little thing, taking thing. She did that all by shorthand. They didn't have those machines, and everything by shorthand. That the judge said, that the prosecuting attorney said, that the defense, everything was said. And then she would transcribe it, because she could type 100 words a minute, if you can believe that, with no there was no anything wrong with it. And she was as good as the other. So well, she did that. Well, meanwhile, these officers that I worked for said, Jim, you ought to go out to become an officer. Well, I had never thought about that. Well, how do you do that? Well, then I found that the first thing you got to do, you have to pass in the AGCT test that they were given all people in the Army at that time. I mean, Enrolled General Classification test. They determined where they were going to put you. Or you're going to be a cook or a mechanic or something. And you had to have 110 or better to apply for officers. So I had to be able to look at all the records that come through there. So I looked mine up and I had 148. And I went through hundreds of them while I was stationed at that particular place. And I only found two better, a 149 and a 150. So I applied for a place called, well, it really didn't have a name, but it's where all the records went that come from the Army, everything about everybody. And I thought, geez, that'd be a great thing for me if I could get in there and I wanted to make a career in accounting. So I applied for it and got accepted, but wouldn't be going there so full up right at the moment why they couldn't call me to take the records. So I was waiting around there. And then the officers had told me, Jim, what they're putting together now to go overseas is a group, and it's composed of people that didn't know anything about, or know as much as you can, about Beaufort 40s. They have a flat directory, they go right into caves, and the military had figured that that's what they need. That's what the Marines needed, that's what the Navy needed, and that's what the Army needed. So he says, they're putting together a group of people that were interested, or our kid could do that sort of thing. Now that would be a good thing for you to come to, if you want to. And they said, then there was having a test there for warrant officers. And I took that and passed it with a breeze, and I could be accepted right now, but I didn't want it because I wanted to wait and see what I did with that other thing that I did. And anyway, make a long story short, everything hit the fan, as they used to say. And I
kind of like that.
Something like
that.
and they told me that they were not stopped giving out anything for this thing that I applied for before, because they had so many of them that wanted to get into. Of course, everybody that had that pull would want their son to go
Right.
to that,
Right.
so it would be it would go overseas
in the
or
war,
anything.
right?
And so they said, no, you can go to the infantry right now if you want, or to this one, this one, that. Well, I thought everything over and talked it over with Joyce, and if I did, why, she'd have to go back to Minneapolis, and it'd be a month before they accepted me to go to these schools. And then it would take at least 4 months to go to one of these infantry schools. So as long as we would take her back, and we said, well, no. So we took her back, got the furlough, took her back, and her mother agreed to move in with us, our apartment, and they lived together there in Minneapolis until the war was over. And I passed up the others because I figured it'd be 4 months and we would be moving all around, and I could go overseas right away because they needed infantry in the
Right.
infantry and all the other sort of thing. So I says, no, I'm going to take this other thing that we're talking about, was something I knew about. And, well, here, why don't you take you passed the test, why don't you take the warrant officers? And warrant officers are sort of ranked right below the commissioned officers. They had the starting salary as a second lieutenant in the commissioned officers, but they didn't go too much further. And I found out in this group that we were going to, the thing only called for 2 warrant officers in the whole battalion. And I thought, geez, I don't want to be one of 2 people, because I saw how they lived. I mean, all the officers lived together in barracks, and when they got out on the field, they'd probably be in tents together. They ate separately and so on, and the warrant officers would be right below them. And then I said, no, I'd rather go in the one with the enlisted men. And I said, I figured I'd do well because after all, I was a sergeant already. So I went with them. And so they put us together, and we're going overseas, and I went with this group. And then we found out that this is what the Army did. First of all, when the Army went, let's see, let me, here. Is that sort of a score thing?
Kind of like.
Yeah. So we went overseas. They put the people that were, the Army was going overseas, they were put in Navy ships with no, they don't have any artillery or anything there. In the middle here, they were set out. And at the corner, we call coffin corners, is where the Navy had ships to protect them. And what did they have on them? Bofor 40s. That same one we were trained on. And they were doing it because they found out that the Japanese, when they found out you were coming over with that sort of thing, they would come in with their kamikaze pilots. What were they? They were suicide bombers. They had 2 bombs that they carried and all their machine guns, and then after they used them all up, they would crash deliberately, commit suicide, crashing themselves into the Army, things that were coming overseas. So being a sergeant, and I suppose in all 4 of them, but in my particular thing, I was on the boat back here in the port side of the rear aft in here. And because I was a sergeant, I had 6 privates put in with me. And because you never knew where they'd come 24 hours a day, we changed off with the Navy people who operated these Bofor 40s. So when they were off duties, they couldn't be on 24 hours a day. Our people would come over, and as we got into it, they'd mix them all up. We'd have half Army and half Navy. So they worked together. And we ate right there. We had, I was going to look in that respect, you got better food out of the Navy than you did in all these things in the Army. Yeah. So I'm sitting up there and thinking, and all of a sudden we do get the kamikaze pilots came after us.
Man.
How many there were, I don't know. The Navy never ever did tell us after how many casualties there were. I don't know because they never told us. But anyway, we were back here in this corner. I was standing on deck right next to all my people, these other 6 and the others. When we got attacked by this one, he had dropped his bombs and he came up and strafing us, and all of a sudden it stopped strafing. Now whether we killed him or whether we crippled his plane or something, and he tried to dive into us in the thing. Well, for one reason or another, he missed us about 25 yards off the port side.
Wow, that's scary.
So I had to exit even before I got overseas.
Wow.
So then we went on to Lang, and we'll have to look up in my service record. I used to have it on the tip of my tongue about which place it was. It was a bigger place where we landed, and we were going to set up this anti-aircraft unit. And we did, and set up and put the guns together and set them on things so that you could fire with them. Because we did get... Is everything all right?
Santa Claus.
That was crazy.